I'm holding here a paper that came in Frontiers Human Neuroscience. What kind of science for psychiatry? And it is a paper about the DSM and the RDoC. And bottom line, it seems to me that it is a paper of cultural psychiatry. And bottom line, it seems like they try to comment about progress in looking for science for psychiatry, basically saying that don't go without us. We have a say here, and cultural psychiatry is important for neuroscience. It begins with the always confusing problem of what is a mental disorder. Typically, psychiatrists are very good at confusing themselves and others, beginning with the philosophy of what is a mental disorder, if it really exists. And I think that it is pretty straightforward that disease comes from the taxonomy of dis-ease, meaning suffering, and the opposite of ease, and that basically signs and symptoms, suffering of the patient can be pretty well consensual definition for disease. And I think it is straightforward that the brain is responsible for the signs and symptoms, so it is pretty straightforward that probably a person without any symptoms has a well-functioning, optimal, adaptive, flexible, plastic brain, and disturbances to those properties of optimization of the brain emerge as properties of signs and symptoms and suffering. So it goes on with attacking the DSM. The DSM is being attacked recently, and it is pretty straightforward that the DSM is not good enough, and people like Stephen Heyman and Thomas Insel already wrote about it for many times, and we know the problem of categorization, we know the problem of biomarkers and etiology, the promise for this kind of diagnosis that has not been delivered, and we know that it is also unrelated to medication sometimes. So here comes this next section of criticizing the DSM, and then it comes on and explains how RDoC was developed, and explains about RDoC. And it says something very interesting here. The RDoC is actually a matrix of phenomenology of psychiatric disorders, put in front of a set of levels of brain organization, from neurons and genes and molecules to circuits, and then to whole brain and even social outer brain domains. And so it is actually, this is what I said to Bruce Kubert when I met him in UCLA. It is actually what is being done anyway. I mean, people are studying aggression at all levels anyway, so it is just reframing what is being done and directing it more specifically. But it says here something very interesting, which I think is important, is that the circuit level, the neural network level, is a preferred level because it is in between the lower level of genes and molecules and the higher level of whole brain organization, which is something that I think is correct and is important. And I didn't know that the RDoC actually emphasized this level, so this is new for me. And then it goes on to criticize the RDoC at many levels. Again, the same criticism of relating, translating, and reductionism, of mental disorders to brain phenomena, and instead of talking about biomarkers, talking about biosignatures, which will be the same thing, but at a network level. And and then there is some mentioning of diagnosing the brain instead of diagnosing the person, and leaving the person out of the assessment, like diagnosing the disease and not the person itself, which is, I don't know, it's problematic for me to think this way, because when you refer to signs and symptoms, you actually refer to the suffering of the patient and to the patient itself. And then it goes on to explain the problematic approach of trying to relate specific circuits like brain structures and brain systems, amygdala and so on, to disorders, which is actually an old criticism of one-to-one relationships between a limited system to the phenomenology of a mental disorder. And what I have to say in this regard is that first of all, it is very interesting that there is this big debate now about what kind of science does psychiatry need. And as I have for 20 years tried to investigate, theoretically investigate what could be the brain basis of the phenomenology, and it seems that the network level is actually an important level, but it is also a level of whole brain organization. I mean, the brain acts as a one system, as a one complex system, and emergent properties are properties of global organization. So actually in my last paper I titled it Globalopathies, emphasizing the fact that the whole brain is optimally organized, and when this optimization is disturbed into different parts and different dynamics, then different spectrum-like phenomena of mental disorders emerges from the whole system as a whole. So I think that the RDoC is important, and that it should proceed at the network level and as the whole brain organization level, because at that level it has an explanatory power going down to the molecular level and up to the whole brain and even social level. And also at that level would be probably the best intervention. I mean, the technology of brain pacemakers and optogenetics and focused ultrasound, these will all probably intervene at the network level. So this is the important level, and I have elaborated on that for many years and developed a preliminary translation matrix, a translation that translates phenomenology of psychiatry into different disturbances of whole brain collapse or biases of disturbances. You can find my publications on PubMed explaining in detail this concept, and you can also go to neuroanalysis.org.il website, where you can have detailed information about this approach and this translation matrix. I actually built a website where you can enter the data of the patient, actually the data that you use today, mental status examination, history, and complaints of the patient. And you just need to press a button of clinical brain profiling results. I titled this translation Clinical Brain Profiling. I think clinical is related to the clinic, brain is related to the brain, and profiling is the type of perturbation or disturbance to the whole brain organization. So by pressing clinical brain profiling, you will get a vector of parameters, and these parameters are well explained in the website. And actually you can start using it for your patients and reconceptualizing their phenomenology as a set of perturbation and disturbances to the brain.